Drug overdose deaths soared to over 93,000 in 2020. That's a 30% increase over the previous year. That's tragic and alarming. But beyond the statistics are the stories of real people, people we love, our families, our friends, our neighbors, who share their stories of pain, grief, and loss and suffering through addiction, as well as the stories of those who work tirelessly to combat this devastating epidemic. I'm Mike Torville. Join me now for Healing Voices Project. Thanks everybody for coming back to Healing Voices Project. We're glad to have you back. Today we're going to be dedicating this episode to Ryan Soden. Ryan was a 30-year-old who we lost in June of 2012, and Ryan was a 2002 Agawam High School graduate. And at the time of Ryan's passing, he had 3 older sisters, and one of his sisters, as I'm told to say, the nice one, is here today with us, Courtney Soden Caruso.
Thank you. I love that you put that in there for me.
Well, I do as instructed.
There you go, right? Thank you for having me.
Sure. And in honor of Ryan, what we wanted to ask, Ryan was an animal lover, right?
Yes.
So we wanted to ask the listeners if they want to donate to the T.J. O'Connor Adoption Center, right? And that's in
Springfield.
In Springfield. That's T.J. O'Connor Adoption Center.com. And we're going to talk about Ryan quite a bit and talk about his love of animals and why that's important to Ryan and your family. Now, before we talk about Ryan a little bit, I know we got to know each other through the Jack Jonah movie, which we did 2.5 years ago now.
God, it seems like yesterday.
It goes by fast.
It
Yeah, I
does
know.
go by fast.
And of course, we didn't know each other before then.
No, he didn't.
But as we did that movie and the production company came up and we of course had all kinds of people involved, we made a lot of new friends.
Oh, yeah.
And what I found in doing that is there were so many people who joined that effort.
Yeah.
And what I learned later, as the same as in your case, is that there was a motivating reason behind that.
Definitely.
Because people who have lost family members and friends wanted to be involved, involved in the community to try to spread the word, create awareness, and I think the Jack Jonah movie helped us do that to a large degree.
Yeah, it did, and I think it helped a lot of people come to terms, too, with some of their loss. Like, make us feel comfortable to come out and talk about each one of our own personal stories.
Yeah.
At least for me, that was really comforting.
And I know, too, the 10-year anniversary of Ryan's passing is coming up this June, right? Right.
Yeah.
So, and I know that's another thing you say, well, lots of things have occurred in the last 10 years. We'll get into a lot of that because I know you've had your own things, you've challenges that you've gone through. But before that, why don't we talk about Ryan a little bit? Tell us about Ryan, what he was like. And
So Ryan, we always say, had a very old soul. He was the other child, like later on in life. He was 11 years younger than me.
Because you, by the way, back to the 3
I
sisters.
have 2
They're older
sisters.
Ryan
yes.
was the youngest.
Ryan was the youngest. I was the youngest out of the girls.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of like, a great blessing. He came 11 years later. So I was 11 when he was born. So I was, and as my sister were, we babysat a lot. So this story was, he's got 3 mothers in the house and he's going to hate all of us when he gets older because there was no other males. My mom and dad had split shortly after he was born. So yeah, he came out a redhead, and boy, did that fit his personality. He was a spitfire.
A fireball, huh?
Fireball.
Yeah.
And just the most adorable kid. I used to call him Ron Howard look-alike when he was little. But
well, when I saw his picture, I thought he looked like Elon Musk.
there you go. Yeah. I mean, he was the first one in the family to ever have red hair, so we were like, okay, we're in trouble now. But yeah, great little kid, kept me on my toes for sure, and everybody in the family. So he was very well loved.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was very devastating. But what transpired there with Ryan, and what brought this whole thing on?
So I think that, like I said, I was about 14 and my parents decided to separate. There had been trouble come on over the years, and so they just, for the best for everybody in the house, it was just best for them to leave. And Ryan kind of got left in the background. My older sister went to college. My middle sister had moved out, and so it was just me, Ryan, and my mom. And of course, I was in my teenage years, so I'm sure I was pushing some buttons. And by the time I was 16, I had moved out. and I moved into my grandparents' house. So all this kind of happened really quick for Ryan. He went from having a family down to seeing all his sisters leave, and then just being with my mom. And not that that was a bad
Like
thing.
the rug got pulled out from under
everybody.
him.
You know, where's everybody going? And so I think the divorce had a really hard effect on him.
Yeah.
We started seeing some behavior where he was, lashing out, or the typical stuff. So he went from having a good family to everybody kind of just, and of course we were all going through the effects of my parents divorcing.
Of course, right.
Living here and living there, and my dad's moved out. So I definitely think that had it was traumatic for my brother. And at 5, you can't really express that, you know.
Right.
It's too young to put that into words. So I would say, he went to school. He was doing good in school. He started having some problems in school. But, he started experiencing with marijuana at a very young age. He was 12. And at this time, again, all us girls are, out of the house, living our lives. I'm working, and, my other sisters getting married, and babies were coming around everywhere. So when we heard it, he would always tell us, oh, yeah, I'm playing around with marijuana at 12. And I'll be like, oh, you don't want to, but you don't want to get into that stuff.
Right. You can say it all you want. But
you can say it all you want. Of course, we were all teenagers at one time. But, he never really bounced back from that. We find that, I think he self-medicated with it. He never wanted to go to therapy like typical children. Why you want to put me in therapy? So he started self-medicating with marijuana at 12. He was very open about it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't really know how to handle this. He's just my younger brother. I'm sure it's just the experimental age. But that's where it started. So I think it kind of snowballed from there. Yeah. At 18, he had his first overdose. We found out that he was using heroin. He had his first overdose, which was a kind of a shock to get a phone call at work, and because we didn't know the severeness of it.
Right. No, did you know he was doing heroin before you found out about the overdose?
It's funny. My sister got married a couple years before that, and we did know that he was experiencing with it. And there's some telltales. There's a huge amount of weight loss, first of all. Skinny, withdrawn, irritability. 1 minute he could be, the happiest person to see you, but then within an hour, he'd be like, just get away from me. It was just like that up and down. So we knew there was something going on. We knew that he had been experiencing with the heroin. I think my dad kind of kept sheltered from us girls, didn't really want to talk about it much. Probably thought that he could handle it. He was living with my dad and my grandparents at the time. There was telltales. There was definitely telltales. I remember saying to him when he came to the wedding, please. Well, at my wedding, years later,
wedding,
I remember saying to him, please, you're in the wedding party. This is such an important day. Can you just try to
just keep it together? Keep it together
for yourself and everybody in the family, yeah.
So what happened on the day you found out about the overdose?
So Ryan actually overdosed the first time at 18. He was in the apartment with my dad, living at the time. A friend with him called. Yeah. My dad was not home, so my dad came home and started performing CPR until the ambulance came. And then it was probably about 2-3 years later, he had his second overdose.
But just not to get ahead.
Yep.
Your dad was performing CPR. An ambulance came, took him to the hospital.
They used Narcan, brought him back, and then they transported him to the hospital.
Okay, and then he was in there for a few days?
He was in there for a few days. I'm pretty sure we had him assessed by crisis. Mm-hmm. We started the procedures of getting him into a rehab.
And by then, now you're all saying, oh, wow, this is serious stuff here.
This is very serious stuff.
It's no more just like casual, put it under the rug. Now
this is a problem.
Now you know it's life-threatening.
Yeah. When you're being resuscitated by your father,
right, and
people are leaving you that you're friends with because they don't want to be in trouble, there's a serious problem.
Sort of forced you all to talk about it, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
It kind of brought out a very strong side in all of us. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, we all had different opinions about what was the best for my brother.
Well, and that's a point. Hold that thought, because we talk about this a lot, how families just don't know what to do. They think this might be the best pastor, and yours is a good example. When you have 3, 4, 5 people who all look at each other and have different opinions, none of which may be correct because
None of
none
them.
of you
No.
are professionals,
Yeah,
right?
but you feel like you know
right.
the right
and,
answer.
And as a result of that, often people make mistakes
Yes.
and go down the wrong path or do something is counterproductive, right?
Yes.
And so anyway, that's such a common thing.
It is a common
Yeah.
thing, and I'll touch upon how that affects the whole family.
Yeah.
My mom at the time is remarried, and she was living out in Connecticut, so she felt kind of out of the loop, and she tried to be involved as much as she could. But again, she was in Connecticut. There was some hurt from the past, so there was a little bit of a resistance with Ryan and my mom. And my dad was taking care of it all. You know, he was still living at he was in an apartment at that time. We started the procedures. We're putting him in rehab. I have lost count how many rehabs he was in. It was around the clock. They go in for their 30 days or they go in for their 2 weeks detox, and then they're back home.
Yeah.
With
no course of action.
No.
Right. Here you go. Good luck.
It takes 21 days to cook a sugar habit. Never mind a powerful drug that is caused by a disease that I feel is awakened in your body at stressful times.
Yeah.
That kept going. He would do good for a while. He'd go to a rehab. He'd come out. He'd be like, okay, I'm going to start exercising. And then he would put all his focus into exercise. And so then we'd get that reprieve. He's doing good. Look at him. He's doing great. And then all of a sudden, just right back. And you could tell by the attitude. You could tell money was being taken. You could tell.
You just did the overall look, too,
The
right?
overall look.
Yeah,
You could
yeah.
always tell the difference in his demeanor. He was the most charming kid ever. But when on any kind of, whether it be alcohol, drugs, or prescription pills, there was a mean side that came out. And I now understand why there's a desperateness there. And that it's the withdrawals that creates that mean person that steals, that lies, because they don't know how they're going to feel better. So nobody around them matters at that time. All it matters is I don't want to be sick anymore. So for him, you could always know. It was very apparent. And we would know with my dad, too, because we'd call all the time and be like, Dad, what's going on? And
So if his first overdose was 18 and he passed away at 30, you went through 12 years of this.
yes.
Wow.
Well, and think about it. He started at 12.
Yeah. Oh, right.
He
With the
started
marijuana,
at 12
right.
self-medicating,
12, wow.
and at 18 was his first overdose. But I'm sure there was, good 2 years, and everybody was experiencing different kind of things with the people that he was hanging out with.
Yeah.
You tend to gravitate to those others that are seeking.
Of course. Right.
Lost souls, I like to say, that are
Sort of
seeking
find each other.
to fit in.
Yeah.
He was very shy, so he never felt like he fit in.
That's common, too.
Right, and then
Yeah,
you have
you-
this group
you-
that's willing to take you in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hey, what's better than that?
You
This
just
group
conform to
accepts
what
me.
they're doing.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
They're doing it. I'm doing it. It's okay.
Wow. So you went through 12 off on. Did you go through any long periods where you said, okay, I think we're past this?
It's hard to remember because it's been so long, but I would say maybe 6 months might have been the longest time that he was clean and sober. But again, there's a different definition of clean and sober. Even when on his longest times, I still think he was using marijuana as a relaxer because there's quite a lot of anxiety that comes from addicts, and they never are just calm. I don't think they're ever calm. Once they start, they're never just relaxed. He would never say, I just feel good. He'd always have some kind of anxiety, whether it be fighting that demon to go back to it or trying to occupy his time so that he wasn't thinking about it. He became, never wanted to leave the house. He was on video games all the time. He just really closed down.
Just isolated himself.
Isolated himself.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And during this, you were getting you got
I
married.
was probably
you
getting married. Yeah,
You
I
had
was the
Camden
youngest.
somewhere in there.
Somewhere
right?
in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So he had another overdose in between. There were times that we had him sectioned.
And before, just you were married and you were the youngest of the
I got
oldest
married
sisters.
when I was 31.
31, and Ryan was home alone.
Ryan was at the time living at my grandparents'. It was my dad
Okay.
and my grandparents. My grandmother, who was the matriarch of the family, had passed away from cancer in our house. We liked to keep everybody at my grandparents' house, so we
Yeah.
kept her home, and we were all around her when she passed. Well, that was a really hard thing for everybody. And then it was just my grandfather who was left with my dad and Ryan in Agawam. And my grandfather had prescription pills, so Ryan would take care of him during the day, but he would also be taking his medication.
Okay.
So we had quite a few losses from the time he was 18 until I got married.
And
Yeah.
that just adds to the...
And the most
yeah.
important people in our family, because we did lived with our grandparents quite a bit through the divorce. So they were like our second parents. They were just wonderful.
Wow.
And so I'm trying to think, we did have him sectioned. He did spend some time up at the local prison up north. I can't even think of it. Starts with a B. Bridgewater.
Did he go voluntarily?
No. He did not go voluntarily. He was in there for I think he was in there for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That was stressful for the family because we couldn't contact him. And you hear all these horrible stories, and we just wanted to pull him out. I don't want my brother there and where can be abused or beaten up. Or that was a really, really stressful time. It put a lot of stress on the family. We didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
We ran out of options, and we needed to get my dad a break from it, and we needed my dad to feel safe. He didn't want to worry about where his son would end up on the streets one night. He would take off, and we'd never know where he's going to be. Or you're going to get a phone call in the middle of the night. He's laying on the side of the road.
Right.
So he did do some time in Bridgewater, and we were hoping that was the rock bottom, but
he came out of there.
He came out of Bridgewater. He did good for a little bit, but there was just numerous things throughout the years that would just trigger him.
Yeah.
Whether it go back to old friends that you used to see, whether it was visiting places that might have been a trigger. He put himself in a lot of dangerous positions to be able to continue his drugs and drinking, definitely.
And I know it's hard to talk about what happened in the end when he overdosed.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll try to get through that. And I'll just speak for myself.
Yeah.
I'll be very honest. There's a point where you're wishing them to be wherever they want to be in peace. I would get phone calls. My other sisters would get phone calls, and it would be, I don't want to live anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And we'd get the phone calls like, I'm just going to take some more pills and just go. And so then we'd rush over to the house and no, you don't want to do that. But that pain that he was in, he didn't care if he lived or died. He did not have a want to be here anymore. He was sick of disappointing everybody. So he actually, the last time I saw him was April. We celebrated his birthday. A couple weeks later, me and my sister brought him to the Westfield District Court and had him sectioned again. And he went willingly this time.
Okay.
He went willingly this time. Stopped at the package store.
And he wanted to get clean.
He wanted to get clean. He could see what he was doing to his dad. My dad
it was a mess, right?
He was taking care of him all by himself. My grandpa had passed at this point. Mm-hmm. My dad needed a break, and we were all trying to give everybody a break, be the support. But we were also arguing amongst each other because everybody had their different opinion. My sister would say this, my other sister would say, I'd be like this, and then my mom and my dad. And it just got to be so chaotic that it was just a really bad time. And he did go in this time. Yep. We had him sectioned. I remember bringing him to court, me and my sister, which was hard.
That was in April of 2012?
April of 2012 was the last time I saw him at my sister's for his birthday. He had turned 30. And I want to say May, we decided to have him sectioned. We talked to him about it. This was after we actually removed him from my dad's house and put him in a hotel. At this point, we're like, Dad, we're taking him out. We're going to put him in a hotel because you got to let him make his own choices.
Yeah, and give your dad a break.
And give my dad a break. It was just too much.
Yeah.
Had him sectioned. I got a call that he had on his at some point, I would think maybe 25 days, close to the end of his stint there for 30 days, he was hiding pills in his cheeks. And they discharged him for that. You can't do that in rehab. You have to take your medication. That was the day he came home, met up with a girl that he was friends with, went and bought some crack, heroin, a whole bunch of stuff that day. They came home. It was nighttime. They had been doing it all day long. My dad was upstairs sleeping in the upstairs bedroom, and she woke up. He did not. The girl they had used in the downstairs living room, watching a movie. They fell asleep. She panicked, did not call 911 right away. There was a fear for her to be in trouble, and she was also an addict, so I can't. Went upstairs, knocked on my dad's door, said he's not waking up. At that point, it had already probably been about 5 or 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. She then came down and started performing CPR. My dad started performing CPR. They had the ambulance come. My older sister got the first phone call. She raced over there. She called me, said, doesn't look good. He's in the ambulance. I don't think he's going to pull through. I was in Southwick. I got the call at 1 in the morning. I knew. I just knew.
Oh, when you get a call at 1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock. I also knew in my inside. He had passed. So we decided to meet at the house first, and then we all went to the hospital and said our goodbyes. Yeah, tough night.
That's tough.
And it was the night before my son was kindergarten graduation. So it was a tough day.
Wow. And now you're going on 10 years.
Yeah. And time does help. It does help. You know, you get emotional like this, but it helps. It's never forgotten.
You don't want to.
No.
How's your sisters doing?
You know, we do good. We don't talk about it much because of this. You kind of keep it inside because you don't want to open the floodgates. We all heal differently. We all have our own regrets, or what could we have done better? We should have enabled, Dad enabled, I enabled. We all did it. That whole point when you're going through that many years of that is to save that soul. It doesn't matter what it is. But in the long run, it actually actually makes it easier for them to continue hurting themselves.
Right.
And I find peace that he's happy now. I find peace that he's there because he was not. There wasn't a good quality of life here.
For a long time.
Right? He didn't want to be here.
You've learned a lot since then, haven't you?
Yeah. I have.
And to ask the question, which is almost rhetorical, because
Okay.
to say, what would you do different, it's hard to say, because you say, gosh, well, if I had only known, and I know you could go through that and second guessing. But if you think back and you say, you know, if there's one thing, and I'm maybe making this assumption,
Yep.
and you mentioned this a few times,
Yep.
with your family all having different opinions, and if a family is going through this right now,
Yep.
and going through the same thing,
Yep.
a mother and father are arguing,
Yep.
a brother and sister are arguing, no, let's do this, no, let's
Yep.
let him, no, let's not enable him,
Yep.
well, let's help, support this way, not that way.
Yep.
Oh gosh.
Okay. It's
I
a
think
full blown.
maybe, at the very least, maybe a family collectively could seek a professional.
And that was definitely on our list.
Yeah.
We had reached out for I think it's Anon and support groups for parents for my dad to go to.
Yeah.
Being everything that he was going through, he didn't want to make this any more public. He was, he was my concern at that point.
Yeah.
Ryan was making his own decisions. Ryan was self-medicating. We couldn't stop that. So we tried to put our focus onto my dad. Dad, we'll go to a meeting with you. Let's do this as a family. We're all going through this, and we are now concerned with you because you're not self-medicating. You're living this life every single day with no reprieve. And Ryan is living it, but then you tune out. You take some drugs, you're out of it. You're
detached.
You're detached.
Yeah.
But everybody else around you is still
Mm-hmm.
in it. So we've had many family meetings. We reached out to other parents.
Yeah.
We put them in contact with other parents that were going through the same thing. We started talking to our own friends that had children going through it to kind of get advice. So we never actually got into the counseling. My dad was involved in some of the counseling that would be provided at the rehabilitation centers. You get family counseling there once in a while. You could come in as a guest.
Yeah.
But it was very difficult to pull everybody together to get into a therapy session because the last thing you really want to do is have everybody know that you're going through this and your child is having such a difficult time.
Right, and there's that word again, the stigma of
there's
knowing,
definitely a stigma.
and that often prevents people from discussing it, talking about it, or seeking the right help.
Exactly.
And we're trying hard to remove the stigma.
Break that stigma.
And I think it's changing. It's changing.
I think it is too. I think it's being accepted more now as a disease.
Yeah.
I think it's something, as we'll probably touch upon, like the cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everybody has something inside them, and sometimes stress factors just trigger it. And some people are lucky to walk away, can have a drink or experiment and walk away, and there's just others that
It cannot.
not.
Again, it's
and they
a
don't know
chemistry
that.
thing. I don't know, and you don't know.
You don't know it till you start it,
And then what?
and then it's too late.
Right. Now you mentioned this too, because I know after Ryan had passed, shortly after, you went through your own health
I did.
challenges, didn't
So
you?
we'll try to get through this one. So 2018, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It was a complete shock. We did not have it in the family. My grandmother did have it, but she was on my father's side. So to say that was a shock was a shock. And I totally crumpled. We pulled through it, but yeah, my dad and my mom were like, no, we're not going to lose another child. I'm like, just throw me in front of the bus because I don't want to do this. I'm okay. Ryan's up there. My grandparents are up there. I'm good. It was a very difficult time. It touched upon a lot of sadness. Again, we had to pull together as a family. We all had opinions on how I should do things, and I was just falling apart. I really just tuned out. I went into severe depression, anxiety. The chemotherapy drugs did a number on me. And it gave me, when I finally pulled through in 2019, it gave me a different look and perspective into what it feels like to be taking drugs and having them control your decisions as opposed to you making those choices. When you're cancer, you have to do chemo. You don't have a choice. If you need it, you do it. Whatever falls out of that is very difficult. I had never been that depressed in my entire life. I was a different person. I felt like my brother. I really did.
You understood a little more deeper.
So much.
Yeah.
So much. I went through withdrawals of anxiety medicine.
This is a mere 6 years after Ryan.
6 years. Yeah.
So it's still
relatively fresh.
So you had this scare. You go through the treatments. You go through surgery. You go through all kinds of things.
Therapy around the clock.
Yeah.
Here we go again. Another depressed child. My dad's holding on. My mom's holding on to me, saying, "Just get through this. Don't give up."
Your son is somewhere around 8. No.
My son was, I think, 11 at the time.
11 at the time. Okay.
He also went into a severe depression. So not only was I handling mine, my son went through some stuff when it was just too much for him.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose my mom, and my poor husband carried us through the entire situation because he was the only one we had in that immediate house that could pull us through. And my family was wonderful. They took every single phone call. They did everything that they needed to do for me to pull through. And when I finally pulled through and everybody kept saying, "You're going to have a great life after this," you don't see that when you're in that darkness.
Right.
Just like an addict. They don't see that they can have a great life.
I'm glad you said that because during that depression and during the depths or the rock bottom or any of those terms that you use, it is very hard when somebody says, "Oh, things can change, they get better," and you just look at them almost with a menacing look, like, really?
You just want to slap them upside the head. Right. You're like, you're not in my shoes. How can you tell me it's going to get better?
Yeah, nice try.
Yes.
Right. But you, I think, have demonstrated that it is the case because you have a pretty full life now.
I do. It really, when I came through that, it put it behind me as much as I could. I got involved in nonprofit foundations with the Jack Jonah Foundation and with the Each Moment We're Alive, which is still going.
Yes.
Awesome support group for anybody who has cancer here locally. They saved my life.
And you want to talk about that because I was going to bring that up. Each Moment We're Alive. I know you, Cindy Sheridan.
We have a friend in common, Cindy Sheridan.
And I see a lot going on with that. But talk about that. And there's a website there too.
There is.
Yeah,
she's doing amazing with it. So I attended that. I was scared to go. Who else my age has cancer in this area? I didn't know anybody, so I did stay there, isolate myself. She talked me into going to the support group, and it was wonderful. There was women there, the same as me, young kids, younger than 50 at the time of diagnosis, and we all pulled together. We cried together, we vented together, we shared our advice. So that eachmomentwe'realive.net, I highly recommend it for anybody going through cancer, and it's also for males too, because we do have some males in there
so
that
it's
have breast
eachmomentwe'realive.net, not .com,
Yep.
.net.
So eachmomentwe'realive.net.
Yep.
Cindy Sheridan runs it. She's based out of West Springfield. It's a great foundation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with that, I know you're involved with that. You're involved with the Jack Jonah Foundation. You have your own company.
I started my own crafting business on the side.
Yeah.
I did.
By the way, I see one of your signs every time I visit my son because he's got it proudly displayed outside his door.
Glad. I love that. Yeah. That makes me feel good.
Yep.
I'm busy. I don't know what happened. When I volunteered for Jack Jonah, that was my first outing. I just finished chemo up in April.
Yeah.
Stopped wearing wigs. Came out with my short hair. People didn't. Actually, I auditioned with a wig on. And then when I came back to start working, they're like, "Didn't she have long hair?" And so I was open about it at that point. I'm like, you know what, this was my journey, but I'm doing this for my brother. Yeah, and it opened up doors.
It opened up doors, new friendships. You and I didn't know each other before.
No, we didn't.
So lots of new friendships from that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then not only that, with the Jack Jonah, you had a part, you had a role in that.
I did. They put me in the movie. I wasn't expecting that either.
Well, there you go. So then, but since then, What have you gotten involved with? Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. There, so that opened up the door for me for a lot of things.
And the Hallmark stuff.
And the Hallmark stuff. So
you've been, wait, just before, how many movies you've been in now?
Oh, goodness. Well, they're short indie films,
Okay,
but probably
yeah.
about 6.
6 movies.
2 backgrounds, one for a Hallmark, one
Yeah.
for an HBO background.
Yeah.
If you knew me before when I had cancer, I would never drive a highway or never cross a bridge. And when I did the Jack Jonah, it opened up something in me too.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I liked working on set. I loved working on set more than
Yeah,
anything. And that I liked acting. And it gave me another creative, because I'm very artsy, way to appreciate life and go out and get it. And that's what I've done. I don't turn things down. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do what I want. This is my life. God gave me another chance. I'm going to live it to the fullest. And I'm going to break out on my own. And it's been wonderful.
No, and I see it's hard
busy.
to keep up with you.
I know. But it's so. Now my husband says the same thing. Are you ever home anymore? And I'm
know.
like, I know. I'm
I know.
so sorry.
Well, the other thing too, hasn't your family expanded?
I have.
Mm-hmm.
I like to call them nieces and nephews, but they're actually great nieces and nephews.
It's a zoo, isn't it?
It's a zoo. We have
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, there's 3 of us girls, and one of my sisters has 4 children.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of grandchildren coming in on that side.
Yeah, and you have Jake.
I have Jake, which is my dog.
Yeah.
I have 2 cats, Jackson and Rigby. And then for Mother's Day, because it was, I hit my midlife crisis, and this is my life after cancer, I'm getting my ducks.
You got how many ducks?
4 ducks.
4 ducks.
4 ducks. It was like having quadruplets.
And they're in and out of the house.
In and out of the house.
Like they're just. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Unfortunately, you have
Extra
to keep
kids.
Yeah,
Right.
it was seriously quadruplets. For the first 8 weeks, they have to live in your house with you.
All right.
I can tell you, my husband was probably ready to put me outside in the pen when they ran out and I built their house. He was probably like, "You're going to." He did not want the ducks, but
Yeah.
he's so supportive. He just is like, she's crazy. She keeps going and adding things into. But I'm like, it's my life,
But
and I've always wanted them.
did he soften up when you
Oh,
give
God,
him
yes.
duck egg breakfasts?
He's afraid to try the duck egg. But
No,
I
he
did
didn't.
leave. Oh, we had one duck, Daisy. She's still with us, but she was the one that's been in my house for the last month. 'Cause
Yeah.
she had a foot injury. 2 surgeries later. And my husband's like, and I'm like, I know, I got to save her foot. So she's been in the house. And when I went to New Jersey to work at the Hallmark Christmas Con, he was in charge of the duck with my son. And, oh, God, I call him so many times. "Hi, Daisy. Oh, you're going to give me a kiss?" He loves her.
Uh-huh.
He absolutely loves her. We don't love her that close
I
to
know.
us in the house, but we love her.
Okay, I know we have a dog, and if our dog, we live on a little lake.
Oh, I
You've
love
been over
your
in-
house.
Thanks. And we see the ducks there, and the dog, chases
Oh,
the ducks
yes.
away, and the geese that come. And
Oh,
so I
yes.
can imagine having a dog and ducks. How the heck does that work out?
So a lot of yelling and screaming, and a lot of me OCD, like, "Don't let the dog out, don't let the dog out." And Jake had seen them since they were babies.
Yeah.
So we always introduced them because I wanted him to protect them.
Yeah.
And I said, if I introduce them as babies, he's such a gentle dog, but he's giant.
Mm-hmm.
And he would nuzzle them and kiss them. But once they went outside and they started flapping those wings and they took off, he would chase them. He would. And we separated them, and we just taught him to be around. And every once in a while, he still chases them, but he stops. It's play to him.
Okay.
I'm not sure the
'Cause
ducks
I've seen
enjoy it.
pictures and stuff
They're
of the
pretty close.
ducks and the cat, the dog all sleeping together.
We're all on the same couch, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just.
I had a
That's
14-day
amazing.
quarantine for COVID. The duck was in the house for 14 days of rest at the same time.
Yeah.
Jake, nobody can lay next to Mama unless I'm up there. So I had the dog, the duck, me. My husband was on the other side of the couch, all watching TV.
Now, your brother Ryan would be proud of you.
He would. I think so. He'd be like, "She was always a little crazy."
But
He's an animal lover.
Right.
He's an animal
Yeah.
lover. And
Yeah. That's awesome.
that's,
Yeah.
their
Well, I got to
unconditional
stop
love.
over and get some duck eggs from you. I
Oh
know.
my God, you should have told me I would have brought you today. I got them
just-
coming out everywhere.
I forgot. Well, I'll have to get over there. And,
Yes, you will.
And you got some acting things coming up more too, or new stuff happening.
The background stuff it's like the lottery. You put your name in, you keep your fingers crossed, and you hope
Yeah.
that you get picked. I am gonna do another volunteer for another '90s con, so it's all the '90s people from my age. You're close there. You're not that far
Close,
from me.
yeah, thanks,
So
yeah.
like Joey Lawrence, Melissa Joan Hart, they're gonna be up at Hartford, so I'm gonna volunteer there
Oh,
again.
good.
Because I enjoyed this one in New Jersey so much. I mean, you're around all these happy people, celebrities. It's a nice thing.
That's a nice thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Things I wouldn't have done before. So yeah, there's definitely you gotta grab it.
Like you said, appreciate life.
Appreciate
and
life.
to go with that website, each moment we're alive,
Live,
you're living that
yep.
quite loud and clear.
Yes.
And it's great, especially after what you've gone through with
Yep.
your brother and the cancer yourself, and
Yep.
And I know we'll be working on other
Yes.
projects and all kinds of things.
Oh, that's right. You're on
together.
my schedule for next year. We got some stuff coming.
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Yep,
exactly,
yep.
exactly.
You're gonna keep
So,
me busy.
and so we're really glad to stop by to talk about this.
I am
it's
very
great.
happy.
Yeah.
I have such great things to say about the Jack Jonah Foundation,
good,
and just
good.
With you doing your project, the Healing Voices and the Fallen Voices, and it's all tied in together. I love it. People need it. They
Yeah.
need to read
Yeah.
a story and say, "Hey, I'm not the only one."
And I think that's with the stories too. What I think about is somebody going back to the stigma. I'm afraid to talk about this, and they read a
Yep.
story and they say, "You know what? This is just like us.
Just like us.
This is what I've been going through,
Yeah.
what I've been thinking about, what I recognize
Yes.
in my
Yep.
brother or sister or whoever." And it might just hopefully prompt somebody to take some action.
And I think the important thing about that is those stories weren't written the day after they came out of rehab or the day after.
Right.
These stories came when they were healing.
In the midst.
And it takes a while to be able to talk about your story. You have to heal from it.
Yeah.
You have to mourn your past. You have to mourn whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then you get to bring your story. So that's, I'm sure, very healing for everybody that you interviewed
Yeah.
on their stories. To say,
To
okay,
get
I
it
can
out
talk
there.
about it
It's
now.
like therapy.
Therapy. I don't
Yeah.
have to be embarrassed anymore.
Right.
I'm done with the stigma.
Right.
And that I
Right.
think that's really, I think if anything comes out of that is these people that have the addiction or whatever it is, don't be ashamed.
Right.
Reach out for help.
And when you reach out, you find there's so many others that have gone
Have
through
it.
it.
Yep.
And you say, well, okay, I'm not alone.
No.
And that's
No.
that's the difference.
And I've learned not to judge as easy as I did before. I
Yeah.
will say that for my brother, I would judge very easily because I never watched his shoes, and I would say, "God, how hard is it to give that up? Give it up. Why are you doing this to the family?" And I don't do that anymore. Now
Yeah.
it's more like, how can I help you? And I'm going to keep my opinions to myself because I am not in your shoes. I don't know what your situation is.
Right. But I know you're doing a lot to help people.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope I can continue it with the walk.
Yeah.
That'll be
Yeah,
great.
we
We're
get
going to
that.
be walking in honor of Ryan.
I
We
think
have a
that's
walking team.
in May.
Yep.
Yeah. So
So you get to meet the whole family then.
right.
I'll bring you some duck eggs. I might bring the
I'll
duck.
get some hopefully before May.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, thanks, Courtney. I really
You're very
appreciate you.
welcome.
And thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you real soon. Thanks.